What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. I know it's been a minute, so long time no see. But your boy been in the transition. Starting the new year at school, been juggling. A lot of different things. Just trying to find like a rhythm with the balance. But time's been moving, so I feel like I'm at a point where I'm finding like a stride. So I felt like I want to get in front of the camera again, get some more episodes of Truth to Power. You might be realizing, got an intro for an episode of the podcast. What's up with that? So I got two reasons for it. So basically, for the first reason, I want to start setting the precedent where I come in front of the camera, kind of give like an intro for what we'll be talking about in the episode, just so people are coming in with like the same baseline level of understanding for the conversation. Also, with this episode, I was recording it back home at a local library branch, and for some reason, I don't know, the computer I was recording the audio from in there, it just stopped working. Started updating, in the middle of recording, so lost some of the audio, unfortunately. But we got a pretty good episode still. The first half of it does a pretty good job at establishing some context for why our guest Nichole started working in the field that she works in over at formerly in the nonprofit that we worked in back home in St. Louis. So just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a heads up for why the episode is a little bit shorter. Hope you guys enjoy it, and also let me know if you guys appreciate like a little bit shorter episode format. We might have stumbled upon something, so definitely let me know if you enjoy the video. Stay tuned, and thanks. Welcome back to another episode of Truth to Power. Today I'm joined by one of the coolest, and I hate to say now, former executive directors in the nonprofit regions in St. Louis, Nichole Dawsey.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. So, kind of breaking the fourth wall to give some context. Nichole is formerly my boss over at Prevent Ed. And Prevent Ed, we work in the areas of education and prevention around substance misuse. And Nichole, would you like to just say anything about our organization? Of you have all the years of being the executive director to just give people a quick spiel about what we do and who we are.
Yeah, so we were founded in 1965, grown a lot since then. We're charged with serving the eastern region of Missouri. So that's 7 counties, including St. Louis City and St. Louis County, which are like huge, population areas.
Right.
We do education, intervention, and advocacy. And you're correct in that I had worked there for 16 years, 6 as the executive director. But then at the end of June, I transitioned out, and now I'm living in Alabama. But we have an amazing executive director named Jenny Armbruster, who's in the interim position. She's incredible. And in January, I'll be transitioning into another executive director position. So currently, I'm a deputy. I forgot my badge today, but soon I'll be back in the number 1 spot.
Cool. That's definitely fitting for you. I can definitely say, just as being able to say that this is like my first internship when it literally have happened without you, because I was literally speaking on a radio show and you offered me a job, and what I could not tell was a joke or you being serious, but I followed up anyway.
Yes, you did.
And it led to me working my second summer with Prevent Ed and doing some meaningful work for my community. So I want to say thank you for that.
You are welcome.
Thanks again for joining the show.
You are welcome.
So if
I have great taste in people.
You do, and I feel like I'm a testament to that.
Yes, you are.
So with that being said, though, and just kind of talking about people, let's talk about your personal background then. So can you tell us about your background and what initially sparked your interest in working in drug education and prevention?
Yeah, so it's like most people, I did not have a linear path to this. Growing up, I was around substance use disorder, but I never really knew it as such. Okay. So it was not a calling of mine, a passion of mine. As a matter of fact, politics was my thing. Okay. And I went to school in Washington, D.C. to be a campaign manager. I wanted to be a lawyer and then be a campaign manager and ultimately maybe an elected official. And I realized, though, pretty quickly once I was there that I didn't have the skin for that, really.
In terms of it being like a demanding job, kind of like people poking at you, or?
No, like I think I saw a lot of the people that I was around, that I was working on the Hill with, and I just didn't really like the fact that I think they got into politics for the right reasons, but then I think they became sort of part of the machine.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do that.
Gotcha.
You know, and I had the privilege of working for some really great candidates on both sides of the aisle, but I saw the ways that they had to twist and turn to get votes, and I just really wasn't willing to do that.
Right.
But then that left me not knowing what the heck I wanted to do. So I joined an AmeriCorps program senior year. I got it. I interviewed and got accepted. It's called Teach for America. Some people might have heard it. It can be controversial. I got accepted in that program and was sent down to Southern Louisiana, very rural, kind of on the bayou. I was brought in as part of their state deseg order. So the state of Louisiana had a desegregation order where they needed quotas of white people, essentially. So I was one of, I think, 3 or 4 white teachers in the school. And I was brought in to teach 6th grade self-contained students, which meant that these students had behavioral or learning issues that prevented them from sort of rotating classes like the other 6th graders. And it was in an elementary school. So my first day, I had, and by the way, I'm a politics major, not education, like pretty much thrust in. And most of my 6th grade students were 15 and 16 years old.
Wow.
Now, if you know anything about 6th grade, you're supposed to be like 11, 12. Okay. And the overwhelming majority of my students could not read at grade level. So I was expected to, you know, teach long division and talk about the Roman Empire and do all these things when in the state of Louisiana at that time, there was something called social promotion. I don't know if that still exists, but when a student was 17, they could drop out. Well, wouldn't you? If you're right, exactly.
Like 6th grade.
Right. So by November, so the first couple of months I was like trying to be Michelle Pfeiffer from Dangerous Minds, and I'm like trying to teach Shakespeare and shit like that. Hope I can curse on this.
Yeah, you can. You're good.
And I realized that I was pushing a boulder up a hill. Not that it wasn't important to teach Shakespeare, but these kids needed life skills.
Yeah,
Many
that
of
wasn't
them were
what they
heads
needed.
of household. They had jobs because at 16, you know, they could have a job. They'd be working all night, trying to take care of their family. Several of them had been victims of sexual assault. One was selling drugs to help his family. One girl had been pregnant multiple times. And they had no self-confidence in themselves, and they didn't see a way out. They just didn't. And so I quickly realized, and I even got the support of my principal, and she was like, I don't care what you do, just don't get me on the cover of the newspaper. Okay. So I started working with them on things like budgeting. So I gave them all like an imaginary $10 bill. And I was like, okay, here's a newspaper ad from the grocery store. You need to figure out how to make this money stretch. Now, this was early 2000s, so $10 went a long way than it does now. How to fill out a job application, like really like things like that. One student, we entered him into an art contest and he got a scholarship to kind of do some after school programming. Really that like life skill, resiliency skill, things like that. That my students already had, but maybe didn't know that they had, or just needed some additional help refining some skills. Teach for America is a 2-year commitment. I did not make it past 1 year. And instead, I decided that I wanted to go into public health. Because while classroom education is really important, I realized that macro level education is, in my opinion, just as important. And so I went into sexual assault prevention, which then led into, you know, all different kinds of prevention work and public health work, communicable disease, avian flu, all of that stuff. And then I found my way really interested in the meth epidemic, which meth was really big in Missouri in the early 2000s, particularly from the county where I come from, which is Jefferson County. It had been touted as the meth capital of the world at one point, you know.
And
so
to briefly ask a sub question. So I was going to ask you, was there like a particular moment or experience that made you realize the importance of the substance misuse field specifically? So I'm wondering, like, with most people who kind of do this work, or even any type of community or just kind of like person focused work, they usually have like a story or something that like really drives them. Do you have anything that is salient in that way? It pops up?
No, I mean, there was money coming in for work in the methamphetamine space because that's where the government was putting their money at that point in time.
Gotcha.
I obviously believed in the importance of education and prevention, but for me, it was just a topic like lots of other topics. And then, so I'm doing this work now, right? And then little by little, I start realizing that lots of people around me are in active addiction, are in recovery, want help getting in recovery. And I think the moment for me that you might be describing is where I realized that I was a codependent, which for those people listening who don't know, basically it's where, I am in relationships with people, familial or romantic or whatever, and I somehow think that I caused the disease of addiction, I can control it, or I can cure it.
Okay.
And I didn't know that. And so at that moment that I started realizing, as all these things are coming together and as I'm learning all of this stuff about substance use disorder, and I'm seeing what's happening in the world and I'm seeing what's happening in my life, at that moment, I think it clicked for me to say, I didn't plan on this, but this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. So there was not a moment that's like, this is the field I need to be in. Rather, it was more of a moment that's like, this is exactly where I need to be.
Gotcha.
And I've been pretty open about the fact that I am a codependent. I use that word. Some people don't like that word anymore. But I've done a lot of work to try not to be that way and try to form healthy relationships and recognize that I need help just as much as a person with, in recovery needs help.
Yeah.
And I think that being in this field has helped me kind of get my own shit under control. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So speaking about your work in the field, can you kind of give us the quick timeline of Nichole at Prevent Ed that led you to being the executive director?
So I started at the organization in, I want to say 2006-ish, as a person going into classrooms part-time teaching in St. Louis public schools, teaching the prevention education lessons, kindergarten through 12th grade. And then I left and took a job at a local health department and was there for a couple of years. And then I ran into my former supervisor and she's like, come back. And I said, I don't want to come back. I have a job. And she's like, we have transition happening and we would like you to step into a leadership role. So that was in 2008. So from 2008 to like 2013, I kind of just began supervising, managing some projects. In 2013, I stepped into the director of prevention role, which is the largest department at Prevent Ed, managing 30 staff, about a $3 million budget. Did that for 5 years. And then when the previous executive director retired, I was privileged to be appointed by the board to step into that role. And I did that for 6 years.
Nice. Because I always wonder, so many different parts of Prevent Ed. And I thought about this when you were kind of mentioning how you were a prevention educator. But we have prevention, we have community strategy, we have the peer work, we have marketing, communication, podcast, just a bunch of different moving things. So it's good to really see how you move through the ladder, because it seems like you can like effortlessly kind of just like jump into different hats within the building, and you can step over there and talk to our finance department or our development department, and it's literally like no drop off. So I was just always curious to see how you kind of built up your your Prevent Ed knowledge and things like that.
It's really it's an astute observation, because starting in one department, you need to make sure as you move up through the organization that you're not favoring them, that you're not just saying, oh, well, I don't know how it works in the other departments.
Right.
Like, it is incumbent upon you as a leader to learn how it works in the other departments.
Yeah.
And even though the perception might be that you're playing favorites at some point, I know there were times where the prevention folks thought I was favoring marketing and communications, or marketing and communications thought I was favoring community strategy.
Yeah.
But I think you have to do a deep dive in every department. And it is and was my job as a leader to be able to step in.
Right.
Like that's part of what it is, you know, whether that's cleaning a toilet, answering a door or a phone, or helping with payroll.
Yeah. So what would you say were some of those biggest takeaways that you've gained as far as leadership skills that come from working in the nonprofit specifically? Because I know that those, from just even interning, have so many moving parts, funders, different community members that, you know, are infected and impacted by the areas of our work. So I was just wondering, what were some of those biggest takeaways that you might have and you're still an executive director, so I'm sure, you know, these things you'll be using for a long time. Yeah. But what were some of those things that you kind of took away as far as leadership skills and just like life lessons?
Yeah, I think, you know, funding, people will always say like funding's the biggest challenge. Well, yeah, no kidding. And there's never going to be enough funding, right? There's never going to be enough money to do all the work that you need to do, to impact all the people that you need to impact, to help all the people that need help. You're never going to do that. For me, my biggest area of focus was and has always been staff.
Okay.
You could never pay nonprofit staff what they're worth. So you, in my opinion, you have to find ways to make them feel invested that go beyond a paycheck. Now, don't mishear, right? They still need to be paid, not just a living wage, but a wage that makes them feel worthy and valued and is competitive. But they also need something else, whether that's benefits, whether that's a tie to the mission, whether that's feeling like they actually get to make change.
Right.
Looking at a policy and saying, that doesn't work for me. And then being able to come to me with a solution and say, I know it says this, but have we ever thought about it saying that?
Yeah.
I think that when people feel invested, it becomes more than just the paycheck.
Yeah, because compensation is more than just a dollar amount.
Correct.
Compensation is fulfilling. It is making sure that I don't have to break the bank when somebody breaks their arm or XYZ. So that's a thing that I feel like gets too misconstrued in terms of just finding a job and kind of staying in this capitalist rat race, you know, just chasing the money. But yeah, like you said, compensation is just more than just the dollars. And to even transition and talk about personally with my intern experience this summer working in community engagement, being able to see that the Naloxone box number went up when I came versus like when I wasn't here, and to see that there are opioid overdose reversal drugs that are available in places where they weren't, because I was able to make a few phone calls and do things like that. And it really did make those days where I'm just sitting at the desk and it's raining not feel as bad, because I know that on the other end of it, you know, something's coming from it, something tangible. So yeah, definitely. I thumbs
also
up to that.
Something else that speaks to exactly what you're just saying is another sort of leadership lesson that I've learned, which is, and this was given to me by one of my mentors, Harriet, who also worked at Prevent Ed. But when I was a teacher, and if you've had good teachers, you know this is true, you have to treat every student like an individual, whether that's differentiating instruction because maybe a student needs a little bit longer to take a test, or a student needs to be able to get up in the back of the room and walk because they get antsy, or a student didn't come with breakfast, so you need to have a granola bar. Treating every student like the individual they are. I took that same mentality to staff. Staff are not a monolith. They're not the exact same. They do not have the same wants and needs and desires and passions. And what makes you tick might be something totally different than makes somebody else tick. And so I think that's why when I reached out to you, well, actually you reached out to me, but then we started talking. It's like, what do you really want to do? Like, no. What do you really want to do? What are you hoping to get from here? And then having those check-ins and making sure that you're matched with supervisors that really help you get where you want to go.
Yeah.
Your team has individual strengths and individual challenges, and they need to be played to. And I think that that's something that is kind of a hallmark of how I lead and how I would want to be led, quite frankly.
Yeah. And you just brought this up to me, and it transitions perfectly into kind of like the next topic of conversation.
Yo, if you made it this far in the video, I truly do appreciate it. You know, the time and attention that you gave me is one of the biggest motivators for, you know, when I'm getting out of class to be like, you know what, maybe I did want to make a YouTube video. So I truly do appreciate it. It goes a long way. Speaking about things that go a long way, if you like the video, literally give the video a like, it does something for the algorithm to let them know that, it's some likable content going on over here, and it can attract some more people to it. So I'd appreciate that. I'd also appreciate if you gave it a share. I know a lot of the people who watch my stuff, I know them personally. So sharing it to somebody who's maybe not a mutual of us can, help a long way. So I appreciate that. You can also let them know they can be a guest on the podcast. You can be a guest on the podcast. All you got to do is just tap in with me. Let me know what type of value you're trying to share with everybody. And I got the platform. I'm sure you can work something out. So if you like what you saw, I'm sure you can watch something like it somewhere around here. I don't know where yet. But I appreciate you for hanging out with me, and appreciate you stopping by.